So we know the old philosophy, I think, therefore I am. Well, I think that it goes much deeper than that, because I don't think we can think our nervous system into regulation. And I don't think we can think our energy fields into regulation. And I don't think that we can think our brain into balanced neurotransmitter exchanges. I do love philosophy, though. So welcome to the Karena, Virginia podcast, where we expect the best and get it. Today, I'm going to share with you some really incredible ways of balancing our nervous system, because when we are regulated, we do have the ability to change the way our emotions work and to change the way our thinking flows. I'm here in Puerto Rico. It is so beautiful here. And I am really in awe of how nature knows what to do. I was talking to someone yesterday who said that after the storm, nothing was green. Everything was just brown, no color, and the birds were gone. And it didn't take long for the birds to come back, for the flowers to come back, for the animals to find their way home. And it's just like everything else in nature and everything else in our lives. I believe we're going through a time of rebirth, and birthing can be very difficult. Most of the people that I know are going through some sort of a shift, whether it be a hormonal shift, whether it be a divorce or a change of jobs, or maybe even just a learning how to love themselves type of shift. I believe there's a new light coming into this world. And from where I'm sitting, I'm looking out at this beautiful ocean, and it's as if I can see the light in the distance. And something I love about the ocean is how it doesn't work so hard. It just does. It just is. Sometimes when I'm watching the ocean, I inhale and I imagine my breath moving with the wave that comes towards the sand. And then as I exhale, I imagine that my exhale is moving with the current that takes the wave back to the vast ocean. And then I do it enough so that when I am even in a city and I'm away from nature, I can imagine that again. I can kind of infuse myself with that meditation, with my breathing. And it's really incredible how many things there are in nature, in the world, in our lives that are helpful for regulating our nervous systems. And it is very obvious that there are many things that are deregulating our nervous systems. So what happens with our nervous system? We know there is the parasympathetic and there is the sympathetic. The parasympathetic is kind of, think about it like a parachute. It's what comes in to bring us to safety. It's what comes in to bring us to that place of regulation. It's not as easy to be in our parasympathetic nervous system as it is to be in our sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic is the one that we talk about most of the time. It's the fight, flight, freeze, appease. Some people are in a constant state of fight and flight. Some people are more prone to freezing. Some people will appease to keep the peace as a way of keeping ourselves safe. Oftentimes, if we are people that appease, it's because it's what worked for us when we were children. If we didn't feel safe, we went out of our way to make those around us happy so that we could create that safety. For me, I am someone who freezes when my sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive. And it doesn't take a lot for me to go into that sympathetic mode. And what I will say is that I do believe things happen for us, not to us. And I think going through life as a highly sensitive child with a mother from England and a father from Italy, and being very different was very difficult for me. And so what it did was it propelled me into learning ways to comfort myself and soothe myself. And my life has really been a journey of that, and always doing my best to stay healthy and to not get caught up in addictive cycles, and to recognize that when I'm reaching for something that is addictive, it's a way of doing what I can to numb that inner child that is in pain. And that if I let myself go into that place of recognizing that the pain is coming from my nervous system being triggered, I am able to bring myself out of that discomfort. And this is very simple, but it's absolutely not easy. So I wanted to talk about this today because I I noticed that when I have this conversation with people, they're really interested in how they can regulate themselves and how they can maybe stop reaching for that third drink or fourth drink, or maybe get themselves out of that cycle of binge watching or whatever the addiction is. There are so many things out there that we can do and that we do to bring ourselves out of what feels chaotic. In fact, just last night there was a big dinner here and I decided not to go. And it's a group of very funny people, really fun people. And I just knew that I needed to have a night of quiet. And I also recognized that I wanted to go, but I wanted to go because I didn't really feel like feeling my feelings. And I knew that if I went out, I would be completely distracted from all of these feelings. But when I play it forward, because of my experiences in life, we know that when we play it forward, when we distract ourselves from something we need to deal with, even if it's an emotional pain or something that's going on in our mind, in our body, in our lives, we have to deal with it at some point anyway. And so we play it forward. And I was already thinking, I really want to wake up and watch the sunrise. I really want to go for a walk on the beach. And so I dealt with what I had to deal with last night rather than distracting myself from it so that I could have this day to really do some spiritual work, which I think I need right now. And I also am pretty open and honest about being someone that my entire life, I believe, has struggled with anxiety and depression and all of these things that I bring to all of you are different tools for finding joy, for living with our purpose in this very intense climate in the world. And something that I know about myself is that if I don't do what I need to do in order to live my purpose, I can freeze, I can isolate, and I can kind of hide the work I've studied so many years to bring to the world. And it doesn't feel good. I think most of us know what it feels like when we are um, hiding something that is meant for the world, because we're all born with a purpose. And brings me to the thought of a caterpillar. The caterpillar has all of the cells, and they're imaginal cells in this caterpillar with the DNA that is already the butterfly. And in order for the caterpillar to go through that metamorphosis, it has to melt, and then the caterpillar has to melt, and then it jumps. So it's like a leap of faith, but it melts first. So we have to melt away some of the limiting beliefs that we have been so accustomed to from our childhood. And then sometimes it's a leap of faith. When I started this podcast, and even now, I often go, oh, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? How am I going to, et cetera, et cetera. And I know it's not just me. It's not easy showing up. But as the old poem goes, it is much more painful to stay tight in the bud than it is to blossom. But even blossoming can be difficult. And when I look out at Puerto Rico and look out at this beautiful nature here, yeah, there was a metamorphosis of this miracle, and nature just returned. And it's beautiful. It's almost as if, when we look at a storm and everything's gray, and then we might turn our head and see a rainbow. And that's hope. Sometimes it takes faith to have hope. Sometimes nature can bring us that hope and that inner knowing. But no matter what, I do believe strongly that when we're born, we come into this world with such an innocence and pure love and this huge open heart. And then as we grow up, small things happen to us, bigger things happen to us, huge things, subtle things. But whatever it is that happens to us as a child often gets stored in the subconscious mind. And that storehouse doesn't remember everything, but the nervous system does. So the body keeps score. The nervous system knows where we are going to be going close to something that's a little bit dangerous. The nervous system also senses when something might bring us pain. And sometimes the nervous system tricks us as well. And that's because of the past. So the things that trigger us in the moment are often triggering us because of something in the past. And in yoga, we call that a samskara. So the samskara is, I'll just give you an example here. Say, for example, this iguana came up on the grass here, which it did, but I like iguana, so I was okay. But say the iguana came up and I saw the iguana, and somehow it reminded me of when I was a child and I saw, something really frightening in a movie with a crocodile attacking a child. But I don't remember that movie. I just know that my body was really traumatized by that, right? So I went to sleep, had nightmares, and this didn't really happen. I'm just making this up. But then as a child, I have this incredible fear of crocodiles and alligators and iguanas. And as an adult, I don't remember that. But what I do know is that there's an iguana right here. And I am so distracted from being able to talk to you because my nervous system goes into freeze mode. That is danger for me. And it can be something much more subtle. It could be someone that has a certain facial expression that reminds us of the facial expression that we received when we were in trouble, when we were young, and we don't even remember it consciously. It's subconscious. So Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. Meaning that if that iguana was here and I went into some sort of trauma from it and I froze, it would direct my life because I would have to cancel this recording and I would have to get into bed, et cetera. Now, I know that's not really the greatest example, but I think we can all think of examples in our lives where we know we're traumatized. We know something is really, really triggered, and we will create a story around it. We will create an entire theme around it. And sometimes if we are courageous enough to call a friend and say, this is what I'm thinking, and it's a really good friend, and that friend says, okay, is this really true? And we say, yeah, it's true. And they say, okay, hold on. I remember when you created this story another time after X, Y, and Z. And then we realize we are creating this drama. We are creating this story because our nervous system has to make sense of what it's feeling. Again, it's unconscious. So our nervous system needs to make sense of it. When we meditate and when we quiet the mind and when we clear those subconscious thought patterns and we bring them to the forefront, we are able to let them go. And we see that they are there from something that happened in the past that may have been painful. And then we can release it. We can shake it off. We can let it go so that when we're triggered again, we don't create that huge story. So ultimately, when we're talking about expecting the best and getting it, that is the law. That is the law of attraction. That is the law of nature. That is the law of life. The thing is, we can't think our way there. And I remember the first time I read that, I think, therefore I am. And I thought, okay, so I'm going to think, therefore I am. And then I remember when The Secret was that really great book and everybody was like, just read The Secret. And I was pregnant and I had already had a miscarriage. So I said, I'm going to think my way to this pregnancy being just, easy. And I'm going to visualize all of this by thinking it. And I had a miscarriage. And here I was teaching fertility yoga and saying, all right, well, you know what? I just had a miscarriage. Little did I realize that what helped me to really be able to teach fertility yoga was knowing what that felt like and knowing that our mind cannot do the work of co-creation of miracles. The mind can't rebuild Puerto Rico. Energy can. Love can. Our heart can. And that's when I was really able to assist women with the understanding of how horrible it feels to feel like our body is failing us, and how horrible it feels to think our way into whatever it is that we want to bring into our lives. And so now when I see the quote, I think, therefore I am. Yeah, I recognize there are some really amazing philosophers. And who am I to say that I don't necessarily feel connected to that quote? I'm not anybody other than me, and recognizing that some of these old ways don't work for me. And I happen to love philosophy, but different types of philosophy. I love Emerson, and I love how Thoreau and Emerson brought about nature in philosophy. And I actually like Stoicism. I like philosophy where there's a bit more of a sense of the laws of nature and the laws of understanding that it's our nervous system as well. That it is not so simple. And again, it's easy, but it's not simple. I don't think philosophy is simple. I don't think life is simple. I think that most of us know what suffering feels like. And I feel like suffering is part of life, but it's when we transform suffering, when we transmute suffering, that we really understand what our purpose is. And not to say that I can look back at my miscarriages and say, wow, those were great. Now I can really help women when they're grieving. No, I would never say that. But I do recognize that there is a strength, and there is there were and are so many miracles that happened from those experiences. And I see this when people are going through difficult times. I see this with clients as well as friends. The universe just provides this soft landing. And if we really look and we really allow, sometimes we'll meet someone on the train. Sometimes we'll bump into someone when we're online getting a cup of coffee. Sometimes it'll be in a sardine-filled elevator where there's a little child and something happens where we end up having a conversation with their parents, and we end up giving that mother wisdom that she's been searching everywhere for. The timing is divine. So we don't think those things into co-creation. We do our work to be as balanced as possible. We do whatever spiritual work resonates with us so that we can be in alignment with the miracles of life. And I love to talk about things that I know are pretty apparent in life from doing this type of work for so long, and from being a very spiritual yoga instructor and talking to students afterwards, and sometimes having them close their eyes in a workshop and realizing that we are all so similar. First of all, I know for me that when I was a child, I really thought that something was wrong with me. I didn't know why I couldn't just be like all the other kids. And I made up all the stories about it. My mom being British, okay, who needs to use the toilet? And I would think that was so embarrassing. It's a bathroom, Mom. And then my father, with his very strong Italian accent, I laugh because he used to say, "Oh, I need the air spray for my air. I need to get the air spray at the VCR." And we'd say, "Dad, it's CVS and it's hair spray." And he'd say, "Oh, hair. I need the hair spray." Okay. And then he would say, "Oh, do you smell that? I smell something in the hair." And we say, "Dad, that's air. Air. This is hair." And so it was just a very different upbringing. And I was born a very sensitive child. Plus, I was 18 months younger than my brother. And my parents didn't have family around. All our family was in Europe. So, I'm sure that my parents wanted to be everything they could for these three kids, me in the middle, but I had a lot of needs that were not met, not for anyone else's fault, but because not having my needs met as a child propelled me to learn how to meet my needs as an adult. So again, things happen for us. That is something we can shift. That is something we can change. Not in our brain, not in our thinking though, in our brain. But it has to start in the heart. It has to start in the nervous system. And then what happens is our neurotransmitters change. So it's not so much our thinking as much as it's our brain chemistry, because we all know brain chemistry, hormones, those things are real. And we can't change our thinking pattern if our brain chemistry is turning left. And we can't change our thinking pattern if our hormones are turning right. So we have to integrate all of that. Like we talked about last podcast, integration is the opposite of suppression. So back to when I'm teaching, I'll have a bunch of students and I'll say, "Okay, how many of us feel like we're not enough and I'm not worthy?" And then going even deeper, "Yeah, I kind of suck. I'm really not lovable." And it keeps going. So I've asked students before, close your eyes and raise your hand. "I don't feel worthy." I would say most of the time, at least 80% of the students raise their hand. I kind of suck sometimes. I would say most of the time, 80%. And then even "I'm not lovable," I would say is even higher. And I remember when I had a therapist once and I was talking about how difficult I was as a child and how when I was in first grade, I actually got sent to the principal's office because we were playing those little triangles. And the teacher said, her name was Mrs. Armstrong, by the way, and she said, "If anyone makes one noise with your instrument, you will go to the principal's office." And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, that could be me, because sometimes I didn't mean to. I mean, I really didn't mean to. I look back at it now and I would never do that on purpose. I was scared of Mrs. Armstrong, but I think I flinched and I hit the triangle and it made that ring sound. And of course, she looked right up at me. And plus, I was always the tallest in the class. And I was the tall girl in the back, taller than the boys, ringing the bell. And she said, "Karena Ferrari, go to the principal's office." And I remember this vividly because I can remember the tiles on the wall and I can remember the smooth area within the tiles and putting my finger on that smooth area in the tiles so that I could walk down this hallway that seemed so long. And the tiles were only on the bottom part of the wall. I know this because I've been back in that school since, and I still have this vivid memory. And the hallway is so small and the tiles are so short. And again, I was so tall, but I went to the principal's office. I ended up being so incredibly traumatized by that. And I had a therapist and I was talking to her about just me. And I said, well, I wasn't really a lovable child. And she stopped and she said, say that again. And I said, I wasn't a very lovable child. And I really meant it. And she said, have you ever met a child that was not lovable? And I said, gosh, no. I love children. But it brought this incredible compassion to me. How could I have really all these years thought that I was not lovable? Because if I was not lovable as a child, then I'm sure not lovable as an adult, because that inner child is such a huge part of who we are. In fact, so much so that I have a firm belief that addictions, any addictions, whatever they are, and there's so much shame around addiction, but these are coping mechanisms. Addictions are ways of avoiding that little voice inside that says, I'm here. And it's the way that whenever there's an addiction, it's a way of just saying, suppress that child. And that child starts to act out. And that's why oftentimes people will think, I'm going to stop this, and they'll white knuckle it. I'm not going to do this anymore. And then they find themselves doing it again. Until we make the unconscious conscious, right? Until we bring that inner child to the forefront and we learn to have compassion for that child and love for that child, until we do all of this integration, the unconscious, the old thought patterns will direct our lives. And when we recognize that old thought patterns being triggered in the present moment creates our inner child to act out, and we recognize what's happening, we're more conscious. And then we can work on our nervous system and we can regulate our nervous system so that we're not going into the fighting or the running away or the freezing or the appeasing. And there are many, many different ways to regulate the nervous system. And I'll be continuing to talk about these things a lot, but I think I'm going to mention just a few things that we can do to regulate our nervous system, because I think we all need it. One is to work the vagus nerve through humming. And all we do is take a deep breath in, and then with our lips, and we create this vibration in our vagus nerve. And we do that over and over again. Humming is incredible. So if you're in that place of feeling either stuck, or you find yourself running away from what you need to deal with, or you find yourself absolutely freaking out, rage, reacting, you're going to say something that's going to cause more problems. You're going to text something that's going to cause more problems. You know what that fighting is going to do, and you want to stop, pause, and hum. Another one is deep breathing really deeply into the lower belly. The breath is our life force. The breath can calm us in the most incredible ways. And again, these are ways of bringing in that parachute, bringing in that parasympathetic nervous system, and then quieting the sympathetic. We're not repressing the sympathetic. We're quieting it so that we can find that balance. We can regulate our nervous system. So since I'm a freezer, something that I do when I find my nervous system is frozen is to get out and be in community, because we're social creatures. We need one another. And sometimes it can be just going to the grocery store, and I will start a conversation with a child. I'll start a conversation with anybody, just so that I can get myself out of that frozen isolation mode. So find some community, or call a friend. And if it's during the day when it's hard to get a hold of someone, just go outside. Go outside, be in nature. If it's the middle of the night, practice some deep breathing exercises. Mantra is so incredible because with mantra, in my book, Essential Kundalini Yoga, co-written, there are a lot of mantras and their meanings are there and they're very easy to learn. So just as I'm looking out at the ocean right now, maybe at the end of this, I will turn around to show this to you. But just as there are many rivers that lead to the ocean, there are many paths that lead to the divine. So there are many mantras in different religions, and there's Sanskrit, where the mantra Om comes in. There's the mantra in Christianity, Amen. I love that. Amen. Amen. There are these meridian points that are working, or you might even hear, you're using the vagal nerve again, right? So one of the mantras that I happen to really love is called Mool Mantra. And Mool Mantra, again, there's many rivers that lead to the ocean. Mool Mantra is from the Sikh faith. And in the Sikh faith, there is one God, and there are these gurus that were living. And then now there's an 11th guru, which is the Guru Granth Sahib. It's a text like the Bible or the Torah. And so in the Sikh faith, there's a story that there was a man named Guru Nanak. He was the first guru. He went swimming and he didn't come up for 3 days. And they thought that he had drowned. But when he did come up 3 days later, he said, Ekonkar Satnam, Kartar Purik, Nirvo Nirve Akal Murit, Ajuni Sebang, Guru Prasad Jap. And what that mantra means is we are all one. There is one God, and we are all part of that fearless. Everything is an evolution. There's no beginning. There is no end. We are eternal. And that mantra is very well known in the Sikh faith because that was the beginning of the Sikh religion. And just saying or just chanting Ekonkar alone, Ek Ong, not Om, but Ong, which is O-N-G, which means the universal sound vibration that creates all beings. Ekonkar, that alone works all these different meridian points in the back of the throat, in the mouth, in the lips, and it can bring a sense of calming to our nervous system by working these meridian points, just like acupuncture can. And it's very real. And the way that I like to talk about mantras is that each mantra is like a phone number. And if we dial a certain number on our cell phones, we are going to send a ring or a text to someone who is in another place. And that is our intention, right? But we don't even necessarily think about it. But if we do set the intention, then we can set the intention for the phone call. Like, may there be light in this phone call, because maybe I'm not looking forward to having this phone call. So may there be light, may there be love, may this be healing for all. May the highest good come from this phone call. So that's our intention, but all we do is dial the numbers and we send that message to that person or their phone rings. So with Ekonkar, we are saying, I believe that we are all one. I believe that we are all in this together. I believe that there is one divine being that is creating this beautiful nature and that is bringing love to humanity. And I believe in hope, for example. But the intention can be, may I feel at ease. and we chant Ek Onkar, that we are almost saying a prayer, but we're using these meridian points to dial a specific number. The number is, I believe that there is a higher power. I trust my higher power. I love my higher power. My higher power is with me now. May my higher power take away this discomfort, take away this pain. May my higher power remind me that I'm lovable. May my higher power remind me that I don't need to reach for that addiction. Instead, I can feel what I'm feeling, and my higher power will eradicate the pain, right? So it's Ek Onkar. And if you want to look that up, it's called Mul Mantra, MUL mantra. Bringing this all back to how we can expect the best and get it. You know, Walt Disney said, if you can dream it, you can have it. It all starts with a dream. It all starts with a dream. And I'm going to add to that we need to make space for that dream so that we really believe it's possible, and not by thinking, but by eradicating the stuck, unconscious belief systems that create stories in our lives that tell us that we're not enough, to bring that unconscious thinking to the forefront so we can look at it. And sometimes we can even laugh at it. Like, where did this even come from? To regulate our nervous system, to really do whatever it is that resonates with us to regulate our nervous system. Again, bring that parachute. Think about it when you're frozen, when you're stuck, when you want to react, when you want to run away from something, when you want to appease everyone, or you're in that codependent trance of, I need to fix this now, otherwise, and you're in this mode of, if I don't fix this now, life is just going to fall apart. That codependent way of appeasing. Any of those are nervous system deregulation. Pause. Do one of the things that we just talked about. Pray for the knowledge to know what is best for you in that moment, or spend time in nature. If your higher power is nature, spend time with your higher power so that you can bring that parachute in. Because when that parachute comes in, and when we are in harmony and we are in that rhythm, we do become like the ocean. We do become like nature, transmuting. And again, the miracle, I will turn this camera around and show you the miracle of Puerto Rico. But first, I will say thank you so much for being part of the Karena, Virginia podcast, because I wouldn't be able to do this without you. And also, please leave comments on YouTube or Spotify or Apple, and let me know anything, or on Instagram, on Karena Virginia Instagram. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you want more of. And if there's any specific type of guests you'd like me to have on. I want to make sure that we are staying in the theme, and that this podcast is serving everyone in really incredible ways. I know that time is so precious, and I want to be part of your time that is uplifting and helpful. So also please subscribe to Karena Yoga on YouTube so that you know when there is even a little short video that's going up, a little teaser, or anything else that I am doing, including the podcast. Again, I am so grateful for all of you, and may we continue to expect the best and get it, not from our thinking, from rebalancing our neurotransmitters, from rebalancing our nervous system, and from doing our spiritual work or whatever it is that we need to do to bring that parachute back in. I saw the sunrise this morning. It was so beautiful. I posted it on Instagram. So by the time you see this, you can look at Instagram and see it. So I'll take you on a short little walk just because I want to talk about or I want to show you what I was talking about, I should say. I mean, look at these colors here. It was also supposed to rain the entire time that we were here. And this is what rain is in Puerto Rico. You get just a little bit of it, but there it is. And then there's that ocean. So that's what I visualized, the wave coming in as my inhale, and then the current taking the water back out as my exhale. So here, I'll show that to you again so you can practice that. Inhaling as the wave comes in. And exhaling as the current takes the water back out.